Volunteer's Guide. The purpose of this brochure is to present easy-to-understand terminology and concepts in the field of volunteering, to present good practices for a wide range of actions involving volunteers in their activities. Increasingly, it is being recognized that volunteering is a valuable resource and should be managed and supported as effectively as possible. The materials used in this guide can be adapted by individual organizations to help them design volunteer management policies and procedures and develop volunteer policies suited to their needs. Special points of interest. Why should I become a volunteer? Volunteering or social engagement volunteer management? What is it? Volunteers stay safe. Where can I volunteer? Where can I find information about volunteering? Why should I become a volunteer? Volunteering is based on voluntariness, help, and community support without financial compensation. A related term to volunteering is solidarity. It represents helping others, recognizing the needs of others, and associating with them, self-awareness for inclusion in social processes with other members of the community. Definitions of youth activism. Youth activism represents the voice of young people who are gathered around a common idea for some social change. Youth activism means social engagement and political activism of young people, active participation of young people in solving relative issues for them, and making decisions in local communities as well as at the state level. Being active means knowing what you want and wanting and doing it. This means influencing decisions about personal development, the development of your city, your community, apart from school and cafes. Have other activities that will enable you to travel and meet new people, gain new knowledge about maintaining peace, human rights, gender equality, European integration, etc. And skills, project management, communication, lobbying, debating. Volunteering is generally defined as a non-profit and unpaid activity by which individuals and groups contribute to their well-being. By volunteerism, we mean the voluntary provision of services to another person, for the benefit of another person, or for the general good, without compensation. Volunteering is only one form of civic engagement included in the construct of civic action and civic commitment or duty, connection between people who volunteer, and other forms of civic engagement. Volunteering plays a valuable role in shaping how to learn to interact with their community and develop the skills, values, and sense of empowerment necessary to become active citizens. History of volunteerism. The term volunteer comes from the Hebrew language and literally means one who wants to give. According to some Egyptian records, these forms of philanthropy existed as early as 4000 BC. Volunteerism appears in various forms, from traditional customs of mutual aid to organized community action in times of crisis, youth work actions, aura, floods, earthquakes, etc. It can be said that we have all been volunteers at some point, whether it is helping paint a friend's apartment or helping an elderly person cross the street, as well as participating in some activity of a local non-governmental organization or school parliament. It is estimated that around 420 million people volunteer in the world. Motivation, personal values. Acting in accordance with certain beliefs, civic consciousness, humane character, value system, etc. Understanding, a circle of people with similar interests, career, the desire to advance in the career, because through volunteer work you can acquire skills and knowledge that can be used professionally and personally. Acquaintance and society. Volunteering brings contacts and acquaintances with new and interesting people. Respect. In the community, plenty of free time, pleasant spending of free time. Organizing volunteering activities 1. Introduction 2. Introduction to volunteer management 3. Preparing for volunteers 4. Volunteer policies and procedures 5. Attracting and recruiting volunteers 6. Day-to-day volunteer management 7. Induction and training 8. Dealing with problems. You may not have a formal title or job description which says you manage volunteers, but if you are involved in recruiting, training, or rostering volunteers, that means that you have a management role. What is volunteer management? Management in general can be described as making the most effective and efficient use of resources in order to achieve your goals. Good people management ensures that everyone involved helps the organization to achieve its goals in the most effective way possible. So how does this apply to volunteer management? Once an organization has a clear mission and goals, it has to decide what resources it needs to succeed. Whatever the initial reason for choosing to involve volunteers, organizations which address the following are far more likely to have volunteers who give their best to the organization and in return receive satisfaction and a sense of well-being from their volunteering. The benefits of managing volunteers. There are a number of benefits to managing volunteers, including clarity for the organization and volunteer, more likely to attract the right volunteers, hold on to volunteers, and benefit from their involvement. A standardized approach to dealing with volunteers which provides organizations with direction and ensures that volunteers get treated fairly and equally. Volunteer management practices continue even when people leave. A mission statement which says why volunteers are involved. Vision. A shared vision of why the organization exists and what volunteer involvement brings to it. Short and long-term goals and objectives which everyone understands. A statement outlining the scope for volunteer involvement. Ring-fenced financial and human resources to support volunteering. Effective monitoring and evaluation of volunteer involvement. The message for organizations involving volunteers is clear. If you want to attract, keep, and benefit from volunteer involvement, then you have to look after your volunteers and manage them properly and professionally. Volunteer management? What is it? The term volunteer management in the Republic of North Macedonia for the majority of organizations that include volunteers or volunteer activities is unknown. Most of those civil and non-governmental organizations implement their volunteer activities according to ad hoc plans that do not contain a detailed plan of activities, detailed budgets, assessments of material and human resources, communication plans, etc. What are the common aspects of management and volunteer management? Let's start by looking at what needs to be managed. The overall organization, daily activities. The budget. The people who work there. Material resources. Internal and external communications and information. Strategic planning for the future. Depending on the size and structure of the organization, these activities can be managed by one person or number to managers who in turn are managed by a senior manager. Volunteer management cycle. You, your organization, and the volunteers all benefit by having a volunteer management program in place. The program is essential in developing and maintaining a positive volunteer environment. Volunteer management is often about formalizing what you are already doing. You'll be surprised how much you can write in an hour about what you already do. Involve others. Delegate. Recruit a volunteer, E, to help you or see if an existing volunteer, S, is interested. Get advice from organizations who already have programs in place. Get help from the local volunteer center. Organize an information-sharing meeting with organization involving volunteers and pool and exchange material. Preparing for volunteers. Who manages volunteers? Why do you involve volunteers? How do volunteers help the organization to achieve its objectives? Is it necessary to manage volunteers? Who manages volunteers? Here is a checklist of tasks involved in managing volunteers. Ensure that the role of volunteers is understood and valued in the organization. Identify volunteer opportunities. Defining volunteer roles. Recruit and select volunteers, organize volunteer induction, develop team-building strategies, maintain volunteer records, organize volunteer roster, provide one-to-one support for volunteers, carry out volunteer reviews, design volunteer policies and procedures, plan training programs, deal with different faculties that arise. The personal qualities and skills of a good volunteer manager include a commitment to the role of volunteers, an understanding of volunteer issues, experience in managing or willingness to learn, excellent communicator, good organizer, recognizes the importance of team building, ability of identify training needs, creative. A motivator combines efficiency with flexibility qualities and skills of a good volunteer manager. Activities start by discussing the following questions with others involved. Why you have volunteers in your organization? What roles do volunteers do? Do you limit the role of volunteers, and if so, why? Once you can answer each one of these questions, then you can write a clear statement on volunteer involvement. This will form the basis of your volunteer policy. In this column, as partners from the Republic of North Macedonia in the Train to Act project, we will present the basic legal norms that regulate volunteering as a special type of activity, the Republic of North Macedonia. The law on volunteering of the Republic of Macedonia was adopted in 2007. Sub-regulations have also been adopted which further regulate the issues of the law, volunteer booklet and manual on the form and content of the volunteer booklet, manual on the method, procedure and records for granting approval for volunteering of foreigners in the Republic of Macedonia, and manual for records of volunteer work. The law was prepared in a broader partnership between the Ministry of Labour and Social Policy, Ministry of Education and Science, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Internal Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Sector for Cooperation with Non-Governmental Organizations of the General Secretariat of the Government of the Republic of Macedonia, Secretariat for European Integration, Agency for Youth and Sports, European Centre for Non-Profit Law, ECNL, from Budapest, Centre for Institutional Development, Youth Cultural Centre in Bitola, MKC, Civic Association MOST, Association for Emancipation, Solidarity, and Unity of Women of RM, ESE, and other numerous associations and foundations. By adopting the law on volunteering, legal regulation of volunteering was also ensure proper application of other legal provisions, overcoming obstacles, and creating conditions for promoting volunteering, and what is very important is that the volunteer effort for people who would like to volunteer and for the wider community will be recognized. In addition, with the adoption of this law, the government of R. Macedonia fulfilled the obligation to harmonize the legislation with the EU. The law on volunteering regulates the organized forms of volunteering, including defining the term volunteering, regulation of the manner of volunteering, determining in details the rights and obligations of the volunteers and the organizers of the volunteering activities, defining the elements and the content of the volunteering contract, regulation of the obligation to keep records of the volunteering and the obligation for issuing a volunteering booklet, and determining misdemeanor provisions for the responsible persons with the organizers and the volunteer for not respecting the provisions of the law and similar, conditions and possibilities of volunteering for foreigners. Who can be organizer of volunteering activity? In accordance with Article 6, an organizer of volunteering can be association of citizens and foundation, religious community or religious group, public institution, and state body. Having in mind that one of the aims of the law was to promote volunteerism as an activity useful for the society, the results of which are beneficial for the broader community, the following principles were respected while defining the organizer of the volunteering activity: the principle of non-profitability, that is not distributing profit, and the public interest. In this line, the law also stipulates tax benefits for part of the expenditures related to volunteering, which are usually introduced as a support to the activities that are not generating profit and are of public interest. It was considered that the volunteering which is performed on voluntary base and without compensation should not contribute towards the increase of the profit and the benefits of the business entities, getting some kind of value without investing any effort that is getting paid. Volunteering should be an activity of interest for the citizens and the state, which should contribute towards the increase of the quality of life with active participation of the people in the social life. Those are the reasons why the law restricts the possibility for volunteering in businesses that conduct business activities and generate profit and benefit. It is obligatory for the organizer of the volunteering activity to prepare a volunteering program stating for which activities it is planned to engage volunteers and for which activities there is a possibility to engage volunteers. That is, to define the types of services which is desirable to be obtained from volunteers, X as help certain group or persons, elderly people, children, support in the provision of medical protection, giving computer and math classes, lectures on certain diseases or classes on activities in the kindergartens, humanitarian activities, environmental protection, or to engage volunteers within the framework of a project, thus defining the manner and procedure for recruiting volunteers. X. Through the public information means submitting requests to certain institutions, faculties or non-governmental organizations, etc. A volunteer who is a foreign natural person, besides the right of this article, is also entitled to expenses for the stay, health insurance, and travel expenses for the return trip. Which are the obligations of the volunteer? Inform the organizer of the volunteering about the illness or other reasons that prevent him/her from giving the services, give service according to the law, volunteering contract, and the general acts of the organizer that he/she was previously introduced to, give services personally and directly, practices in the training in order to provide quality service, inform the organizer of the volunteering about the harmful consequences that he/she is familiar with and which may damage the organizer, the volunteer personally, or any third parties. What are the obligations of the organizer of volunteering activity? Provide conditions for performing the volunteering according to the law and the contract for volunteer service, issue to the volunteer a booklet for volunteering, and to state in it the data stipulated in the law, provide materials and assets for performing the volunteering, provide payment of the previously agreed expenses in due time, provide confidentiality of the data and protection of privacy, provide other conditions stipulated with this law or that were agreed mutually between them, and provide insurance from professional diseases and injury at work during the volunteering. Volunteers, stay safe. The Stay Safe procedures for volunteers should be organized taking into account 3 security scenarios. Scenario 1. Low intensity during regular activities. Normal situation. How to ensure the security and well-being of volunteers during their activities, including situations relating to health, events in public places, road accidents, local crime, and socio-economic problems. Scenario 2. Emergency operations, situation during/after disasters. How to stay safe during crisis, emergency, and disaster situations. Scenario 3. High-intensity situation during conflicts or internal disturbances. How to stay safe during internal disturbances, protests, escalating violence and conflict situations which pose added risks for volunteers, kidnapping, sexual assaults, and increased lawlessness. What is important to volunteers when it comes to their security? 1. To feel that the organization cares about volunteers and provides all the support needed, including psychological advice, specific and adequate equipment and materials, coaching, training, transport, accommodation and meals when required, accident insurance, and administrative, legal, and other support. 2. To know that the organization has clear plans and rules on security matters, to be aware of the risks/threats/dangers involved, and the strategies and actions established to mitigate them. 3. To feel comfortable, respected, accepted, and integrated, which increases self-esteem and confidence. To have a friendly working environment which reduces stress and is effective for delivering quality humanitarian services. 4. to be aware of stay-safe security procedures for volunteers who are participating actively in humanitarian programs, assessments, and decisions relating to them. 5. To receive information on stay-safe procedures, supervision, and coaching on a regular basis. 6. To be sure that their family and loved ones are safe and not in need, especially when a disaster emergency occurs or in the case of tensions and conflict. 7. To be sure that they have decent, safe living conditions, providing a suitable environment for their active participation. 8. To have safer access to people in need, affected and vulnerable people, individual approach, understanding the fundamental principles and humanitarian values, knowing how to use the Red Cross, Red Crescent emblems correctly, basic security awareness, mapping the local situation, personal conduct behavior, competence, skills, and knowledge, compliance with security regulations and standard operating procedures, institutional approach, organizational environment, security culture, sound security plan, rules and standard operating procedures well understood, adequate security management and security support, information available in external relations with key security stakeholders, psychological support and stress management support. How can volunteers be ensured safer access to people in need? By consolidating good practices for the preparation of people, by ensuring full respect for and understanding of the fundamental principles by volunteers and communities, by disseminating information about the correct use of the Red Cross, Red Crescent emblems, by establishing a clear methodology to follow where access is difficult or complicated. It is obligated to conclude a contract for volunteering in accordance with Article 14 of the law. It gives a possibility to conclude contract for volunteering with domestic natural persons, also in cases when the volunteering is in duration of less than 40 hours per month. The contract is concluded between the organizer of the volunteering activity and the volunteer. The contract for volunteering with a minor can be concluded only with written consent from his/her parents or guardians. The contract for volunteering has to contain the following elements. 1. Contracting parties, organizer of the volunteering, title and seat, surname, address of dwelling, respectively residing. 2. Object of the contract. 3. Place of volunteering and duration of the volunteering, and if there is no permanent position, then stating only the places where the services will be provided. 4. Volunteering activities or services that are provided. 5. Separate rights and obligations. 6. Type of insurance during the volunteering while coming and going back from the place of volunteering and other activities planned during the time of volunteering. 7. Previously agreed expenses for the volunteering and the manner of compensating them. 8. Manner of ending and terminating the volunteering contract. And 9. Date and time of concluding the contract. Which are the obligations of the volunteer? Inform the organizer of the volunteering about the illness or other reasons that prevent him/her to give service according to the law, volunteering contract, and the general acts of the organizer that he/she was previously introduced the training in order to provide data, inform the organizer of the volunteering about the harmful consequences that he/she is familiar with and which may damage the organizer, the volunteer personally, or any third parties. What are the obligations of the organizer of volunteering activity? Provide conditions for performing the volunteering according to the law and the contract for volunteer booklet for volunteering, and to state in it the data slip rails and assets for performing of the previously agreed confidentiality of the data and other conditions stipulated with this law or that were agreed insurance from professional diseases and injury at work during the volunteering. Volunteers are part of their local communities and can therefore help map the local environment in terms of factors that may affect their security and well-being, such as 1. Health problems, quality of water, hygiene and sanitation, accidents, diseases, cold weather, stress, sexually transmitted diseases, epidemics, etc. 2. Security incidents in schools, houses, apartments, parks, restaurants, bars, shopping centers, open markets, banks, ATMs, religious places, local crime, bandits, gangs, burglary, theft. 3. Roads, traffic problems, lack of road safety and accidents. 4. Violence against women, children, elderly, minorities, drug users, HIV/AIDS positive people, and domestic violence. 5. Diversity, cultural differences and traditions, actions against minorities, immigrants, refugees, and displaced people, discrimination, xenophobia, and stigma. 6. Socio-economic problems, lack of opportunities, job-related problems, working conditions, type of contract, organizational environment, threats, opportunities, etc. Volunteers and local communities. The importance and benefits of giving back to your community. Why is it so important to give back to your community? Why is it so important to find a cause you love and volunteer your time? Spending time enriching your community is a great way to broaden your perceptions of the world. By immersing yourself in a community and surrounding yourself with people who are dedicated to bettering the world, you can learn so much about how the world works. You gain a unique sense of purpose by serving those around you, one which often manifests in other areas of your life. Volunteering and social activism, rural areas and settlements, mountainous areas of the southwestern region of the Republic of Macedonia. The southwestern region of the Republic of Macedonia is a highly mountainous area in which rural areas and settlements are located in passive mountainous areas, difficult to access, infrastructural, socially undeveloped, and under continuous pressure of negative migration. A large part of these mountain villages are almost empty, abandoned by the resident population. However, there are living rural communities in which there are still active village families with a traditional way of life, small farmers who traditionally raise various types of domestic livestock and produce cheese, meat, homemade drinks, or food in a traditional way. A large part of the socially necessary activities in rural communities are realized by people through a kind of volunteerism and participation in various social projects. Maintenance of existing communal infrastructure, such as village water supply networks, cleaning of wild dumps, cleaning of village paths and forest roads, marking paths, organization of traditional events, interventions to extinguish fires, solidarity actions to help fellow villagers, etc. What is missing in the overall practice above all is establishing good leadership and channeling energy and skills towards more complex development challenges, such as reducing extreme poverty, improving gender equality, fighting climate change, defining regular annual volunteer calendars, activities, educational workshops for acquiring new knowledge, etc. In this context, in the past period, our team worked in the field in several mountain villages where several different social activities were carried out on a volunteer basis. In doing so, we realized video materials, interviews with the participants, and informative conversations as a kind of joint training in order to support and develop these forms of volunteerism as social activism. Differences between civil engagement and volunteerism. Civic engagement is typically seen as a form of activism, environmental, community, and political. Volunteering is another form of civic engagement, as is national service and service learning. The general idea of civic engagement is remarkably similar to the philosophy of volunteering, taking part in activities that improve the local community or focus on global social issues. Volunteering isn't just about working with a non-profit or a corporate project, it's also about advocacy and activism. Volunteers are often on the front lines of addressing societal issues, which is absolutely a form of civic engagement. There are different definitions of civic engagement, but according to most definitions, it is a broad, complex, and multi-dimensional construct that includes participation in political processes and community-based activities, as well as political and civic knowledge, skills, beliefs, and values. One of the most well-known definitions of civil engagement and globally accepted is that of Barrett and Paci, 2019. Thus, they simply define civic engagement as the engagement of an individual with the concerns, interests, and common good of a community. PIA 3. Barrett and Paci, 2019, also argue that civic engagement does not necessarily mean participation, as they distinguish between civic participation, that is, participatory behaviors and actions related to the community or community issues, and psychological engagement, that is, interest, opinions, values, and beliefs about political or social issues, and maintain that both forms constitute civic engagement. Volunteering is defined in simple and broad terms. Volunteering means spending some of your free time helping others, and examples include helping people in the community or participating in activities that mean protection of the environment. Volunteering is an especially relevant form of civic engagement. Civic participation refers to participating in your community to develop it with the help of your knowledge, skills, and values to make a difference in your society. The goal of civic participation is to raise the standard and quality of life in your community through commitment and motivation. Young people are considered very important in civic participation because they bring new and innovative ideas. The term civic engagement describes people actively participating in their communities and in the political process. It entails people becoming involved in politics, voicing their thoughts, and making a positive impact on society. Voting, volunteering, advocating, attending public events, and participating in conversations about social and political concerns are all examples of civic engagement initiatives. What are civic activities? The potential list of civic activities that comprise civic participation is almost endless and, of course, varies from place to place. A few examples of civic participation on the local government level include voting, attending a council meeting, working at a communal garden or community activity centre, volunteer opportunities, civic engagement, struggle over specific and local issues, general criticism of social and political systems. The aspiration of individuals or groups to make a change. There are different forms of civic engagement: economic activism, boycotts, strikes, lobbying, media activism, internet activism, hacktivism, independent media, non-violent comfort, youth activism, student protests, etc., demonstrations, petitions, the so-called civil disobedience, etc. What are the 4 categories of civic engagement? The main categories of civic engagement are political engagement, community engagement, civic skills engagement, social justice engagement, issue tackled by the Project Train. 2 act differences between civil engagement and volunteerism. What are examples of civic engagement activities? Examples include local cleanups, tutoring, donating blood, membership in community associations, voting, census participation, writing lawmakers, protests, and civil disobedience. Citizens and their communities. Civic engagement, activism, and volunteering in the Republic of Macedonia. This study looks at civic engagement in the Republic of Macedonia in the period from 2012 to 2016 among the population of prime working age from 16 to 66. It focuses on civic engagement from 4 different aspects. Firstly, it focuses on engagement in civic initiatives for the common good, that is, citizens working together on actions aimed at improving communities. The second aspect is the aspect of civic activism, that is, the attempts to solve various social problems in collaboration with the authorities or by engaging in public hearings, working groups, civil protests, petitions, and by submitting complaints and proposals. Thirdly, it looks at conventional civic engagement, that is, voting in parliamentary, local, and presidential elections. And finally, It looks at volunteering that is providing unpaid help to individuals and organizations. Citizens protest against oncology clinic authorities, Skopje 2023. The Cystic Fibrosis Association protests. In the course of only 2 months, the Cystic Fibrosis Association of Macedonia has organized several protests. They have aimed to put pressure on the government to procure a medicine can help manage the symptoms of cystic fibrosis, CF. The protests have also served to put the spotlight on the institutional negligence demonstrated by the authorities towards patients suffering from CF and other types of rare diseases. SU tackled by the Project Train. To act through an interactive and innovative process of learning and commitment, we strive to encourage young people to directly promote volunteerism as an act of commitment and solidarity, and as a process of engagement and development of all parties that, on the one hand, brings benefits to the volunteers by engaging them in the community in different fields of their interests and providing practical skills and knowledge that help young people to grow professionally in their career, but on the other hand, bring benefits to the person, group of people, institution that the volunteers are committed to helping or working with them in certain social questions. Our focus was how to work with volunteers in poor rural areas, how to create a useful, well-planned training course for a target group that is not highly educated, does not communicate in foreign languages, or does not have access to the latest information technologies, how to make their volunteer activities sustainable and continuous. How will it encourage young people in rural communities to engage in awareness-raising processes, including promoting volunteerism in our modern society as a tool for personal engagement in professional development of young people with access to new concepts, tools and methods of volunteering, as well as for the opportunities, the programs, and institutions, organizations that can provide volunteerism. Issue tackled by the Project Train. 2-act volunteer recruitment process. Choosing the right volunteers is an important step in supporting each organization to achieve its aims. Attracting and recruiting volunteers. Finally, the guide ends with one of the very important activities that refers to the correct and efficient setting of the process of selection and recruitment of volunteers. Recruiting volunteers is a great way for civil society organizations to get help by involving volunteers in their activities, but at the same time to provide valuable experience for the people who volunteer. For everyone, especially small organizations that don't have a lot of experience, finding the right people for the job is of utmost importance. This part of the guide is intended to facilitate the process of volunteer recruitment by organizations. Given that the performance of the various activities requires specific skills and competencies, especially when the organizations involve working with professional skills, with special tools or materials, risky situations, children, and vulnerable adults, it is necessary to prepare a description of the volunteer role as an integral part of the application form. Issue tackled by the Project Train. 2-act volunteer recruitment process. Choosing the right volunteers is an important step in supporting each organization to achieve its aims. Attracting and recruiting volunteers. Finally, the guide ends with one of the very important activities that refers to the correct and efficient setting of the process of selection and recruitment of volunteers. Recruiting volunteers is a great way for civil society organizations to get help by involving volunteers in their activities, but at the same time to provide valuable experience for the people who volunteer. For everyone, especially small organizations that don't have a lot of experience, finding the right people for the job is of utmost importance. This part of the guide is intended to facilitate the process of volunteer recruitment by organizations. Given that the performance of the various activities requires specific skills and competencies, especially when the organizations involve working with professional skills, with special tools or materials, risky situations, children, and vulnerable adults, it is necessary to prepare a description of the volunteer role as an integral part of the application form. Issue tackled by the Project Train. 2-act. Attracting and recruiting volunteers. Volunteer recruitment process, sample application form. Volunteer recruitment process, sample application form. Evaluating your volunteer recruitment process may not seem a priority once it's over, but you will need to do it if your recruitment isn't going well. Indicators of this would be little or no interest, but not from the right people, people not taking up the offers, volunteers, starting but not staying. There are a number of reasons why these things may be happening, and it's important that you ask the right questions to find the answers. If there is a volunteer center near you, it would be worth talking to them to see what advice they could give. It is always worth reviewing your recruitment procedure before starting on a new one. The tendency is often to dust down the previous one and hope for the best. However, an hour of a review could be a very worthwhile investment. Recap on steps in recruiting. Identify roles. Write the role description. Target the potential volunteers. Agree the interview and selection procedure.